Give us your thoughts again about how you think the economy can survive the next few months without stimulus, frankly, because the Fed has come in and said that they have our backs no matter what.
Absolutely. So obviously the Fed has been helping to move things along to keep money flowing. And we've seen a resurgence in the economy from when we hit bottom in the second quarter. Consumers are continuing to spend, albeit that is slowing as we're seeing a resurgence in virus cases. We are starting to see some headwinds in going into Q4. One thing that I would love to mention is that housing has remained extremely resilient, really bouncing back, hitting historic highs. The Fed's a large part of that, purchasing the mortgage-backed securities and keeping rates low. But certainly the other part of that is demographics and the fact that there's a massive generational cohort aging into their prime home buying years and buying homes, and that's working to prop up the economy as well.
Odeta, if we don't get that stimulus or if it's delayed until post-January, how much can more purchases or purchases at the longer end do?
Well, so the Fed can do a lot again to keep the money flowing. It's difficult, obviously, for the Fed to create demand, to create the need for jobs, to push consumers to purchase. Again, so far that's surprised us all. Consumer spending has remained surprisingly resilient. A lot of that will just depend on the fate of the labor market. If we continue to see the momentum that we've seen in gains in jobs going forward. And it is up to the labor market going forward.
How long can the consumer last?
There's really been a bifurcation for consumers. There's obviously been a lot of those that have been able to save a lot of their money during this economic decline and channel it towards things like buying a home. But of course, you have those that have been kind of disproportionately impacted. We look at those in the services sector, kind of the lower wage sectors, particularly renters, that are starting to burn through some of the savings that were accumulated in the last couple of months, and will without that flow of income, we'll need to dip into that saving, and that really is a headwind for the economic rebound.
And we know that savings are down about 13% already. Odeta, this K-shaped recovery that everyone's talking about, does it just continue to get more distorted as we go along? Is it the people that already are suffering that will suffer even more?
And that will really depend. We talked a little bit about a stimulus, will depend on that, and will certainly depend on the labor market. We've seen the services industry make some, have a strong rebound in past months, but with the increased closures that we're starting to see as COVID infections rise, that path remains incredibly uncertain.
We push the story forward where we're going to have a default and a recovery rate conversation. Curious about how you're thinking about default rates at this moment with some of those small businesses.
And again, very, very dependent on whether consumers are spending. Consumers create demand, obviously. And so if we have employment gains continue and consumers feeling confident, consumer confidence rising, and consumers feeling able to spend, that should prop businesses as well. And so a lot of it will depend on consumer sentiment and their spending habits going forward, and especially into the holiday season.
Sure, and presumably there will be some job creation, particularly delivery companies and so on. But at the same time, there is going to be some structural unemployment that comes out of this. Odeta, do you have any estimation of how much that might be?
We don't have an exact number, but we do know that the more permanent unemployment we have, the longer people are out of work, they become discouraged and they're less likely to enter the labor market. And so this really needs to be a kind of swift rebound. We need to get people back to work as soon as possible, because studies show that the longer they're out of work, the less likely they are to go back to work, and they'll require retraining and whatnot. And so the key here is to try and get people back to work and to really mitigate the number of people that are permanently unemployed.
How long would it take the permanently unemployed that we've seen go from temporary to come back?
And that will really, again, depend on kind of the path forward here on what the labor market does, and kind of the voluntary and involuntary consumption that we'll see in the months to come. But again, the focus here should be on preventing that temporary unemployment from becoming permanent. And we have seen a rise in permanent unemployment rate, and that's really the concern here on out.